I was gonna rip his heart out, I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one can stop me. Lennox is a conqueror, no, I'm Alexander, he's no Alexander. I'm the best ever, there's never been anybody ruthless. I'm Sonny Liston, I'm Jack Dempsey, there's no one like me. I'm from Nairclaw, there's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart, I want to eat his children. Praise be to Allah.
Welcome back to Keep It Real Boxing. This is Cypher Box, and welcome back to my weekly podcast called BOUT the Ropes, where I talk about the trending stories from this week from the sport of boxing. Alright, so let's get into it. Look, let's get into the biggest story of the week, which broke out on Monday, the 5th of March, which was Canelo Alvarez testing positive for clenbuterol. Now, these were only trace elements of clenbuterol that were found in his system. According to Dan Raphael of ESPN, that's the article I'm using that I read, he basically tested twice on the 17th of February and the 25th of February. And on both occasions, he tested positive for clenbuterol, for traces of clenbuterol, which he is blaming on contaminated meat he had consumed in Mexico. Now, since then, a lot's happened, of course. His team have turned around and said that they're going to move his camp to to the United States, which they've done. The WBA and WBC have fully backed Canelo, saying that these are in line with other test results that they've had in the past, where they found traces of clenbuterol in other Mexican fighters like Eric Morales and Francisco Vargas a few years ago, where they also said that it was due to contaminated meat that they tested positive for the drug. Also, the WBC and WBA have kind of basically turned around and said that they believe he's innocent and they've given him the all clear. Canelo says that he will continue to obviously subject himself to random blood testing from VADA. On the 3rd and the 5th of March, he took a couple of more tests, and they have said that now he is completely clean. And his test results came out negative for any traces of clenbuterol. It's completely out of his system. Now, as you know, this is not uncommon when it comes to Mexican meat. So when it comes to livestock in Mexico and in China as well, I've talked about this in the past, it's not unusual for this sort of situation to occur. And I don't want people thinking I'm going to start making excuses for Canelo or anything like that, because believe me, I am not going to make any excuses here at all for Canelo. All I'm saying is that it is quite common that you do find clenbuterol is used quite commonly in Mexico and in China to beef up their meat, to give it extra lean muscle to their livestock and their cattle. Okay, it's not unusual. So first off, what is clenbuterol and what is it used for? Okay, look, there's a number of reasons that clenbuterol can be used. The first one I'm going to touch on is the actual medical reasons for clenbuterol to be used. It's generally used for people who have breathing disorders, especially asthma sufferers. Okay, it helps them to basically breathe easier and breathe better. That's what it does in a nutshell. There's no complex explanation for it. For asthma sufferers, it just helps them to breathe better. Okay, but it does have other uses, especially when it comes to athletes and to sportsmen and women. Okay, it is more commonly used as a thermogenic. Thermogenic means tending to produce heat, and the term is commonly applied to drugs which increase heat through metabolic stimulation. In fact, you will more than likely find more clenbuterol use in fat loss plans than anywhere else. It is a very common fat burning tool used by steroid users. Now, this is a drug that is commonly used by bodybuilders, okay? And you don't have to be on steroids, by the way, to have to use this compound, to get the fat loss benefits out of it, so you can lose weight quicker, cut weight quicker. You don't have to use steroids in conjunction with clenbuterol. You can just use clenbuterol on its own. Alright, but it is very common with the bodybuilders out there when they're looking to cut weight. Now, a lot of bodybuilders use it in the hope that they can gain lean tissue or lean muscle by using clenbuterol. However, it's been proven actually that it doesn't actually do anything for human beings in that sense. It doesn't work, basically, in short. But what it has proven to do is it does work on animals. Hence why you get a lot of cattle farmers and slaughterhouses in Mexico and China using it on their meat, because it works on animals. It does build lean tissue and lean muscle on animals, but it doesn't work on human beings. So in a sense, it's kind of pointless if you are using it as a bodybuilder, because you're not going to get much gain from it, is basically what I'm saying. So how else could an athlete, whether you be a boxer, whether you be a runner, whatever, can benefit from clenbuterol? Like I said to you, clenbuterol's medical use for it is for asthma sufferers. Now, if you're an athlete, if you're a track runner or a footballer or any kind of athlete, to be honest with you, it could help increase your cardiovascular endurance, levels. But apparently that even clenbuterol, even in that situation, it only helps you improve your cardiovascular endurance a little bit. It doesn't actually increase it massively. Some athletes out there might use it thinking that it will help them breathe easier, have better cardio, but it only makes a small improvement. It doesn't make a massive improvement. There's better drugs out there. There's other PEDs out there that you could use to help you in that area that do it better and are better for you than clenbuterol in terms of helping you in that area of your performance, if that makes sense. And like I said, guys, I want you to bear with me on this one, because I kind of want to talk through all the uses and all the reasons why clenbuterol may be found in an athlete, in any athlete, to be honest with you. But at the same time, I just want to let you know, obviously I will link all the articles that I've derived all this information from into the description of the video, as I always do. So if you're an athlete, what is the best use for clenbuterol? Well, I remember I talked to you earlier on about thermogenics. So the thermogenic effects of clenbuterol basically increases your body temperature and the metabolism is enhanced. Fat cells are stimulated due to the increase of temperature, and at this point you will get the beginning of the fat burn or fat loss process, if you like. So that's basically the best use for clenbuterol when it comes to an athlete. If you're struggling to make weight, or you're trying to cut weight, if you're bodybuilding, you want to lean it up, you want to make yourself look a bit more cut up, and you've got those elements, those little bits of fat, that 1 or 2% of fat you're trying to cut off. Even if you're a boxer, when it comes to a boxer and you're struggling to cut weight, or you're having a problem with cutting weight, it's the best tool to use in that sense, from what I understand. There is also another article I found from USA Today, which was published 2 years ago, where they gave a warning about clenbuterol use in Mexico in their livestock. Now, they stated in there that there was an example they gave of this, where in 2011, 5 national team soccer players tested positive and were banned from the CONCACAF Gold Cup. I hope I said that right. Also, at the same time, they also stated in that article that in 2015, the Mexican authorities inspected 200 slaughterhouses and this was 2015, and clenbuterol was found in livestock in 58 of those slaughterhouses. So it just gives you an idea of what kind of problem they have in Mexico when it comes to this sort of the usage of clenbuterol and with livestock. Again, another article from 2017 where WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, put out a warning to athletes who were competing in the World Para Bodybuilding and World Para Swimming competition. So it was the World Championships, and obviously a lot of athletes were going to be out in Mexico competing in this, and they put a warning out about contaminated meat in terms of what the repercussions would be if you consumed contaminated meat and you tested positive, basically, that there wouldn't be any leeway. And this is what they basically advised to their to the athletes, right? So it said both the hotels and the venues where the athletes will be staying will not serve meat, beef or pork. However, fish and other low-risk options will be available. Athletes must use their utmost care and caution if eating meat whilst travelling abroad, and you should be aware of the potential for contamination. To reduce the risk of unintentionally ingesting clenbuterol through contaminated meat, athletes must choose food from a reputable food source, avoid eating liver or liver-derived products whilst overseas, avoid eating unusual or exotic meat products. Athletes are encouraged to keep a detailed dietary journal whilst traveling in Mexico and China, which may be helpful in recalling the details of specific meat ingestion should it be required to assist you in results management. Under the World Anti-Doping Code, clenbuterol is a non-threshold, non-specified substance, meaning that any amount of clenbuterol detected in an athlete's urine sample is reported as a positive test. Therefore, it is important to note that strict liability dictates an athlete has ultimate responsibility for what is in his or her system, regardless of its origin. Victor Conte, who is a leading authority and expert in anti-doping, was asked his opinion, and this is what he had to say. Clenbuterol is a very potent and effective performance-enhancing drug that would certainly help a boxer. Canelo and Golovkin fought 6 months ago. What have they been doing since then? For 4 months, they had the green light to do whatever they wanted. Here we end up with this dog ate my homework type of excuse, and everyone thinks Canelo was doing drugs. It is plausible that he did not intentionally cheat. Nobody can say for sure if there was intent or not. He could have used clenbuterol for 3 months and there are still traces in his body, or he could have eaten tainted meat, but these are multi-million-dollar athletes. I'd be shipping in fresh meat from somewhere other than Mexico. They had to know this was a possibility. Okay, so I've given you a lot of information there, what clenbuterol is, examples of what's happened in the past in Mexico with other tournaments, sporting tournaments, giving you Victor Conte, who is a leading authority in anti-doping, what his opinion was. After all that, I'm now going to give you what I think. Okay, in my opinion, Canelo Alvarez is at fault here, and Canelo Alvarez is to blame. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm not saying whether Canelo Alvarez cheated, because we can't prove that. We can't prove whether he was cheating or whether it was tainted meat. But there is enough to suspect him here. Okay, this is not the first time this has happened. You know, I mentioned it earlier on. Francisco Vargas and who is it? What's his name? Eric Morales also tested positive years ago in the last few years, and they said it was the same reason. Contaminated meat. Listen, my point is, yeah, you live in Mexico. You are well aware that in your country you have contaminated meat. You know full well that cattle farmers and breeders, or whatever you want to call them, in your country use clenbuterol to beef up their livestock. Yeah? Okay? If you're well aware of this, why would you train and consume meat at the same time from your homeland? Yeah, it's irresponsible. You've done it to yourself. And I've said this before in other videos where, remember, I did a lot of videos on Luis Ortiz and the whole blood pressure thing, and I said it straight even then. I said he is at fault as a fighter because you know what? He didn't put the information down in the forms, in the VADA forms about his blood pressure pills. Okay? At the same time, I also proved, because a lot of people are saying, well, he doesn't speak English and all that sort of stuff, and I proved that the forms actually come in Spanish too. So far as I'm concerned, you as the athlete are completely responsible for what goes into your body and the outcome of your tests. And if you're well aware that in your homeland, in Mexico, there is tainted meat, there's contaminated meat, then that's on you. Now, am I suspicious of Canelo? Yeah, you're right, I am suspicious. I'm suspicious of any athlete that ends up testing positive for a PED. I'm sorry, I am. And I am suspicious of Canelo now because we don't know what's been going on. You don't know if he's been taken, like Victor Conte said, they had like 4 months to do whatever they wanted to do. Yeah, those trace elements, yeah, although they coincide with the amount that you would find in someone who's eaten tainted or contaminated meat, they are also, that could also prove that that's the end of a cycle. So he might have been taking clenbuterol for 3-4 months or whatever it is, and those trace elements are what's left from that 3 month or 4 month use. And then they turn around and say, well, hold on, we've got traces in my body still, but you know what? I can always get away with that and just say it's contaminated meat. I live in Mexico. You know, I ate contaminated meat. The other thing I agree with is Victor Conte, which he touched on, which was that these are multi-million-dollar fighters. They've got loads of money. Canelo's a superstar in boxing. He's got loads of money. He has the financial resources to do everything within his power to prevent this from happening. Yeah, he could have moved stateside. He should have moved stateside way before his training camp started, and he could even ensured like, hold on, someone do a blood test on me, make sure I haven't eaten anything recently that's gonna pop up in the tests. No, he could have done absolutely anything and everything to avoid this. He has the financial resources. Golden Boy Promotion have the financial resources. They could have avoided this, and that's why I'm suspicious of Canelo. We can't prove it because there are only trace elements. But my point is that the WBC and the WBA especially the WBC, have proven once again that their VADA testing clean boxing program is a load of bullshit. Yeah, they let Luis Ortiz off. They continually let fighters off. If this been some lower ranked fighter, you know, and who didn't make a lot of money in fights, who wasn't that popular, they would have banned him for it. I guarantee you it. Yeah, someone that fans didn't really know that well, they would have got him out of there and slapped him with a ban. But because this fight has so much money involved in it, they did not pursue it any further than that. They did not slap Canelo with a ban. And do I believe Canelo should have faced a suspension for it? Yes. Because once again, just like I said with Luis Ortiz, it is negligence. You can't prove if the fight was cheating, but you can pretty much turn around and say there's enough evidence to say that you have been negligent in terms of your responsibilities to ensure you are a clean fighter. Yeah, that you don't test positive for anything, whether it's contaminated meat or whether you're cheating, doesn't matter. Yeah, you know, you're just giving a green light again for any Mexican fighter or even a Chinese fighter out in China, because they do this. They use clenbuterol in livestock in China too. Like I said, you know, you're giving the green light to say it's contaminated meat. Sorry, and they'll say, yeah, you know, it's in line with, you know, contaminated meat traces that we've seen in the past. You know, we'll let him off. Just make sure you're clean for the next 3 or 4 tests, and you know it's okay. It's not okay. Okay, it's not okay. There's a lot of fighters who'll come out and give their opinions of it. I've recently heard Kell Brook. He said it's a shame because it kind of taints everything he's done in his career. It puts a black cloud over his career. Billy J. Saunders has been very vocal. We've seen some of the things he says. He's called him a wanker over social media, saying you're a cheat. Come on, Golovkin. You know, Liam Beefy Smith, who he fought at 154 pounds. Canelo fought him for the WBO world title at light middleweight. He's come up and said, well, he goes, I always wondered how he was so much stronger than me. He goes, now I've got suspicions. Now I believe he was on something. You know, everyone's putting their points in. I'm not going to accuse Canelo of cheating, but what I am going to say there is enough beyond reasonable doubt to suggest he may have potentially cheated. Yeah? And if he didn't, even if it's contaminated meat, he has been negligent, he has been irresponsible, and he needs to be taught a lesson for that. Here you go, here's a 12-month ban, we're stripping you from our rankings, you'll have to work your way back into them. You know, also here's a hefty fine to go on top of it, right? You can't box for the next 12 months is what the WBC and WBA should have said. Next time, be more careful. And that would teach athletes a lesson, boxers a lesson to say, actually, you know what, I need to be a bit more careful in terms of what I'm putting in my body. Or it also teaches you, if you were a cheater who's using contaminated meat as your excuse for testing positive for clenbuterol, it teaches you a lesson that this isn't going to work with us. Yeah, you can't come to us and say it was contaminated meat. You know full well that in your homeland they use clenbuterol to beef up livestock. You should have done more to avoid this situation, and you could have. There was plenty. You have the financial resources to do that, Canelo. Sorry, we're not accepting this as an excuse. We are going to ban you for 12 months, and here's a hefty fine, and we're going to strip you from our rankings. That's what should have happened. Sorry to say, yeah, whether he was cheating or whether it was contaminated meat, either way, it still does not clear him, in my opinion. It does not take away his responsibility he had as an athlete. And I know what a lot of you are going to say. I know a lot of the Canelo fanboys are going to jump on here and start saying, oh, you're hating, you're being biased. No, he was cleared. Look, his last 2 tests were on March 3rd and March 5th came clean. Of course they want to come clean. The clenbuterol is out of his system now. It was at the end, it was trace elements. Of course he's going to come clean now. Okay? But my point is, all the fanboys are going to jump on here and accuse me of hating or something like that. No. Because I've actually enjoyed watching Canelo's career. I enjoy his style of fighting. Yeah, I think he's a very good, very talented individual. But he's just ruined it, in my opinion. Because there's always going to be this question mark over his head, this black cloud saying, are you a cheat or are you not? And even if it was contaminated meat, like I said, you've put all this suspicion on yourself and no one's ever going to give you full credit now for your career and things you achieved. Because people are always going to question, well, there was that time he tested positive for clenbuterol, do you remember that? Quite suspicious that was. Look at other fighters, Manny Pacquiao. You know, a lot of people still accuse Manny Pacquiao, although he never tested positive for any sort of PEDs. People, you know, question how quickly he moved up in the weight classes. Floyd Mayweather, IVs, you know. These things are still questioned, and there's people out there who turn around and say, well, there was that moment where people are questioning it. And it's always going to hang over your head. Regardless of what you say or do. Regardless of whatever reasons or excuses you give for testing positive. So that's my opinion on it. Look, in my opinion, it's the fighter's responsibility, especially when you got all that money. Yeah, you could have done anything and everything to avoid the situation, but you chose not to. So in my opinion, that makes me suspicious of you. When you're that wealthy as a boxer as Canelo is, and he has all the money, even in Mexico, I'm sure he could have hired people to go around testing the meat from certain slaughterhouses, or he could have even contacted. I told you there were back in 2015. You know, the Mexican authority themselves, like I said, did a test, went around checking, checked 200 slaughterhouses, and 58 of them came up as they had been using clenbuterol in their meat. I'm pretty sure he could have contacted someone in the Mexican authorities and say, hey, I need a bit of help going into a fight. Can you tell me which slaughterhouses I can trust and which ones I cannot trust? There you go, there's an idea. He could have done that, but he didn't. Why? You have to ask the question. Sorry guys. And I know this is going to hurt a lot of you Canelo fans out there. Remember, I told you I'm not a fan of any particular fighter. I'm a fan of the sport of boxing. I don't care. Whenever I watch a fight, I'm a neutral. Every single fight I watch, I am a neutral fan. Because I don't support, I'm not a fanboy. This is my fighter, that's my fighter. And I don't do any of that nonsense. I'm a fan of the sport. First and foremost, and I always will be. And I'm sorry to say, he could have done loads of things to avoid this, but he chose not to, which is going to make me suspicious of him. And like I said, he could have contacted the Mexican authorities because they've already clearly done an audit on quite a few slaughterhouses over the years. Could have gave him the information for it, couldn't they? He could have got the information from them, right? That's the slaughterhouse I'm going to buy my meat from. I'm going to avoid all of these ones over here, though. That's just my take on it. All right, moving on. Okay, so let's get into this whole social media beef between Errol Spence Jr., Kell Brook, Eddie Hearn, Jermell Charlo, Billy Joe Saunders, Daniel Jacobs, Jermall Charlo. It's been going back and forth for the last few weeks, and I'm just going to go take you through the tweets that these guys have been exchanging with one another, and then give you my views on what I make of the whole situation and these potential fights. So let's start with Jermall Charlo. This is what he had to say before Kell Brook's fight against Rabchenko. Kell Brook, that was his comeback fight at 154 pounds. He beat and stopped Rabchenko in 2 rounds. More of a confidence boosting fight, just to get him back into winning ways, etc. But looked pretty decent, but nothing to get overly excited about at this point in time, because obviously I feel you still got to see what Kell Brook has left in the tank when he goes up against stiffer competition, in my opinion. But anyway, Jermall Charlo threw this out. Hearn, if Brook wins within 6, he might be a nominee for 06-09. I call the shots on this one, Lions only. Charlo then went on to say, Eddie might be the new Don King of boxing. He might be trying to cash out on you, Kel. That's why he's over there running his mouth to believe the hype. My bad. The last win made y'all think Rabchenko was 154 and 147 best. Nah, player. We the best. Do you really want that smoke? To which Eddie Hearn replied, UV, Special K Brook and Daniel Jacobs v your bro on the same night. You gotta give Eddie Hearn his props. I think Eddie Hearn's probably the best promoter in the world, I'm not gonna lie. Regardless of what you think of him, he does smell an opportunity when he sees one, and in his head he just automatically thought, hey man, I could have both these fights on the same night if these guys are up for it. And as a good promoter, as a really good promoter would do, he's gonna see an opportunity and think, cha-ching, I can make some serious dough here. But you know what, it's not a bad idea. You got to give him credit for that. It is not a bad idea. I didn't see whether there was a reply from Jamal Charlo to what Eddie Hearn said in this tweet, but before I give you my opinion on what I think, you know, about these potential fights, let me give you some more information in regards to what else happened over social media between Kell Brook and Errol Spence Jr. So here we go. So Spence tells Kell Brook, if Kell Brook gets a world title, I'll fight him at 154, and Kell Brook replies, I'll take you up on that offer. Then Errol Spence Jr. tells Kell Brook, you got to get the title first, mate. Next time I'll break both your eyes. Keep talking. And this was on the back of what Kell Brook said on Sky Sports YouTube channel, Sky Sports Boxing, where he did an interview and he said he would destroy Errol Spence Jr. in a rematch at 154 pounds. And obviously Errol Spence Jr. replied with this tweet. Kell Brook wasn't having any of that though, because he turned around and said this: 1, I ain't your mate. 2, you started the talking. 3, stop hiding behind the belt. Man up rather than shout out man down. Keep your belt nice and cozy. Come see me at 154. I won't take your belt, just your O, then your heart. So let's get into this. Alright, let's talk about Kell Brook. Obviously Kell Brook, as we know, he had 2 back-to-back defeats. One against Triple G and then against Errol Spence Jr. Now, Kell Brook in a recent interview, like I said, on Sky Sports, go to their Sky Sports boxing channel called Sky Sports Boxing, and you can see the interview for yourself. Or if you follow me on Instagram, you know, I'll put it up there as well on my Instagram page. Now, Kell Brook's saying that, you know, it was because of the eye injury, because of the weight draining he had to go through. He went up and fought Triple G at 160, and then he had to weight drain himself to come all the way back down to 147. He feels more comfortable at 154, and he thinks he basically would do a demolition job on Errol Spence Jr. Some points I agree with, some points I don't agree with. He also said that if you look at it, I was outboxing him and beating him in most of the rounds up to the point where my eye got damaged. His orbital bone got broken again in the other eye this time. Here's my point. Do I agree Kell Brook was winning most of the rounds up to that point? Yes, I do. The first 6 rounds, I've always said this, I felt Kell Brook was winning 5 out of the first 6 rounds. From the 7th round onwards, when Errol Spence Jr. damaged Kell Brook's eye, you know, that's when Errol Spence Jr. took over from that point onwards. I felt Kell was outboxing, you know, was doing really well and outpointing him. But what do I think of as the reasons for Kell Brook's given for losing to Errol Spence Jr.? That's your own fault, mate. That's what I think. Yeah, you decided to be greedy and, sorry to say, stupid. So did your promoter, and move all the way up to 160 pounds. Not take any sort of warm-up fights or anything like that to acclimate yourself to the weight. You went there for the money. You fought Triple G, who's the best at middleweight. You know, he's holding the majority of the belts, regardless of what people want to say. He is the kingpin in that division. You went up there to fight him. You got beaten up. You got your eye damaged. Yeah, and then when you decided you were going to come back down to 147, you were trying to make fights with Manny Pacquiao, all these other names, except Errol Spence Jr. And then in the end, you decided, well, I can't get a fight with anyone else. You know, I have to meet my mandatory challenge, my mandatory defense against Errol Spence Jr. So let's take on Errol Spence Jr. You took on Errol Spence Jr., doing really well in that fight in the first 6 rounds. Like I said, he won the first 5 out of the 6. And then Errol Spence Jr. took over from that point. And I don't want to take any credit away from Errol Spence Jr. because he did what he had to do. That's not his fault. He came in there, did the job, got the job done, made Kell Brook quit, because let's face it, Kell Brook did quit. He counted himself out in that fight and took your belt. So none of your excuses fly. You know, you can't make excuses like that and take credit away from Errol Spence Jr. It's not his fault. It's your fault. You made the stupid decision to go all the way up to 160, which I criticised a lot back then when I was doing my little blogs on Instagram. You know, about it being a money fight, etc., and all that sort of stuff, and how I thought it was a stupid move on the part of Eddie Hearn and Kell Brook. This whole, daring to be great, and in the end, you had to come back to £147 because you couldn't hang at 160. It was too much for you. End of the day, that's your fault. Yeah, okay, Kell Brook did look sick. He looked ill in that fight against Errol Spence Jr. He looked seriously weight drained. It was all done wrong. But that's your fault. That's your fault. That's your promoter, your manager's fault. That's your team's fault, your trainer. That's all on you. If you didn't prepare yourself right, or if you took unnecessary risks in your career, that's your own fault. You can't blame Errol Spence Jr. for that. He's going to go in there and do what he has to do. And if you give him the advantage, that's your fault. Like I said. What do I think about the rematch? First, Kell Brook's got to get a world title. I would like to see the rematch. I think there's definitely some beef between these two. It could be a very interesting rivalry with them. You can have the whole US-UK thing going there, because I know a lot of people like to get into all of that sort of stuff, which just adds to the hype of the fight, of course. But first, Kell Brook's got to prove himself at 154. Kell Brook's got to prove that, Rabchenko was just a warm-up, confidence-boosting fight. Hand-picked opponent to make you look good and to help you build confidence, which has obviously worked. He's now got to go in and take on the serious contenders at 154, and he's got to pick up a belt before he fights Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence Jr. says, I'm only going to come up to 154. He's made it quite clear, I'm only going to come up to 154 if there's something in it for me, which is a world title. Now, Jermell Charlo holds that WBC belt. Jermell Charlo is interested in making that fight. The Charlo's at the moment having a bit of a problem getting fights that they want, especially Jermell Charlo at 160, which I'll come to in a bit. But Jermell, he wants those big fights, he wants those big money fights, he does. You've got Jarrett Hurd facing Erislandy Lara pretty soon for the IBF and WBA titles, a unification fight. Saddam Ali still holding that WBO title. Rumours are that he may be facing Liam Beefy Smith over here in the UK. He'll be defending his title against him, potentially, who knows. Then maybe, Eddie Hearn's talking about, if Smith wins that fight, then we'll take, if that fight happens, then we'll take, Kell Brook will take Liam Smith and, pick up a world title that way. If I'm honest with you, that would probably be the easiest route for Kell Brook to get a world title against Saddam Ali or Liam Smith, should they meet each other. I think the winner of Jarrett Hurd and Erislandy Lara maybe would be the next best approach. I think definitely for me, Jermell Charlo will probably be the most difficult one, in my opinion. The kid, I think he may be potentially the best one at 154. Debatable, Erislandy Lara as well, but then it all depends on how, the fight between Hurd and Lara turns out as well. So, look, it's no easy route for Kell Brook is what I'm saying. He's got to pick up that world title fight if he wants a rematch against Errol Spence Jr. And there's no easy way of doing it, in my opinion. I think Liam Smith, like I said, no easy way. Like, I don't want to be disrespectful to Liam Smith or Saddam Ali. Saddam Ali looked against Miguel Cotto. Could he box like that and perform like that against Kell Brook? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. The other question you have to ask is how Kell Brook will respond if he gets injured in the ring again. Although his orbital bones in both eyes have apparently healed and he's back on, he's okay in that sense. If it was to happen again, what would Kell Brook do? Would he quit? Or would he keep fighting? There's a lot of questions to be asked by Kell Brook. Has he still got it? Where's his mental state psychologically? Where is he at? Has he learned to overcome the psychological effects of the injury he sustained against Triple G and then against Errol Spence Jr. again? If it was to happen again in the ring, would he be able to still persevere and and fight through it, etc. and stuff like that? So there's a lot of questions to be asked about Kell Brook. At this moment in time, I can't answer any of those questions because all he's fought is Rabchenko at 154, and to be fair, for me that was a hand-picked opponent to make him look good and help him with his confidence. It's only when he goes up against the big boys in that division are we going to really see what Kell Brook is made of. Has he still got it, you know, and can he go on and become a two-time world champion? But I think they're great fights. I think, you know what, if Eddie Hearn can, you know, materialise, you know, some magic, make a bit of magic happen here, and you know, I like that idea of both the Charlo'S on the same card, you know, having, you know, Jamel against Brook and Daniel Jacobs against, you know, Jamal. That would be an interesting fight. Okay, moving on, let's talk about, as we're on the subject of the Charlo'S, let's talk about Jamal Charlo at 154. Now, Jamal Charlo is having a problem, you know, he's not getting the fights he wants at 154 for obvious reasons. Obviously, CANELO and Triple G are tied up in their rematch with one another, so he's been put on the shelf. You know, he is the mandatory challenger to Triple G's WBC title. You know, there's other opponents out there. David Lemieux, who just lost to Billy Joe Saunders. I doubt he would want to take a fight against David Lemieux because people probably were just trying to say, well, he was already beaten up by Billy Joe. There's a potentially he could fight Billy Joe Saunders, and this is where the beef is coming into it. You know, we recently saw Jamal Charlo and Daniel Jacobs go at it, you know, at the Wilder's Ortiz event, and they were just basically getting up in each other's face, talking a bit of trash, you know, basically giving it to each other, you know, saying like, what we're going to do. Daniel Jacobs asking Charlo, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep going back and forth over Twitter, or you want to make this happen? And for me, go watch it, you know, it's all over YouTube. For me, that's a fight I would love to see. I've been calling for that fight for a long time between Daniel Jacobs and Jamal Charlo. I think it'll be a great fight. I don't know who I would pick in that fight. I'd probably have to really, you know, go over their fights and analyse it and really break down their weaknesses and their strengths and all that sort of stuff before I make a prediction. But it's a fight I would love to see. I think it'll be an epic battle between them two. I honestly do. Also, Billy Joe Saunders is in there. You know, I've talked about Billy Joe Saunders and Daniel Jacobs a lot in the previous podcasts. I'm not going to go over it again. You know, either you want the fight or you don't. You know, if you want it, sign the contract, make the deal, make it happen. Like I've said before, if a fighter really wants a fight, he'll tell his promoter, that's the fight I want, that's the only contract I'm signing, go and make the fight. And I'm talking about in terms of Billy Joe Saunders and Frank Warren. Daniel Jacobs, Jamal Charlo and Billy Joe Saunders, again, they're talking trash to each other, saying they can do this and that to one another. Look, it's all great, you know, this is all great entertainment, you know, it's enjoyable to watch over social media and YouTube videos, etc., stuff like that. But it doesn't mean shit, doesn't mean jack shit until you sign the contract. Yeah, these are all great fights, great potential fights, and it's great to see them talking and going back and forth with one another. But you know what? That talking can only go so far, because eventually boxing fans are going to turn around and say, sign the contract, stop talking to one another, and actually make an effort to make the fight. So let's just hope the fights do materialise. I think they're great fights, and any of those fights, you know, any of those fights are great fights, and I love to see them. And you know, it just shows that, you know, boxing this year is just going to get even better than last year. You know, and even if these fights don't get made till 2019 already looks good. You know, with potential fights. Yeah, Thurman against Spence, Crawford against Spence, Crawford versus Thurman, etc., etc. These fights, you know, look, it's all good for the sport, and you know what? I hope it happens. So let's move on to Anthony Joshua, Mr. AJ. I just want to take a quick look, basically do a quick part on how AJ is looking in terms of preparation for his fight with his unification fight with Joseph Parker. So, you know, Joseph Parker holding that WBO belt. AJ's got the IBF, WBA and IBO belts. And look at these pictures, man. Look, this is a comparison. So on your left, you've got the 27th of October. I took this from Anthony Joshua's Instagram page, 2017. Look how bulky and big and rigid he looks in that sense. And then look at it, you know, recently, 27th of February this year, he has slimmed down massively. Like, he is looking slimmer, quicker and slicker. And if you've watched my prediction video for Anthony Joshua versus Joseph Parker, obviously I picked Anthony Joshua. I said he'll stop Joseph Parker in the 10th round. That's what I'm looking at. And if you want to know why I said that, then go and check that video out. But one of the things I said in there, my biggest concern with Anthony Joshua was the size, the amount of muscle mass he is carrying. Yeah, it slows him down, it makes him more, stiffer in there. I wanted to see an Anthony Joshua, a slimmer version of Anthony Joshua, the kind of Anthony Joshua we've seen against the likes of Dominic Brazil and Charles Martin and stuff like that, where he's lighter on his feet, quicker on his feet, more maneuverability, all that sort of stuff, more agile, That's the kind of Anthony Joshua I think we need to see against Joseph Parker, and going forward. I want to see him getting that big and bulky again. Looks like he's definitely learned his lesson from his fight with Klitschko. He gassed out in that fight massively as well. Still, showed a lot of heart, came through it, persevered, got the win. Even though I felt Klitschko was winning on points, he came through it and got the job done. So, shout out to him for that. But definitely happy to see AJ slimming it down and cutting it down. It looks like he probably might have taken out his weight routine completely, his weightlifting routine, completely. So it's not a bad thing, encouraging sign. Hopefully, it plans out the way I would like it to plan, how I predicted. But look, I'm not overlooking Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker, very good boxer, very talented individual himself. You can criticize his last two performances, I know I have, but at the same time, sometimes you need a fight like this to bring the best out of you. And maybe this is what will bring the best out of Joseph Parker as well, is this fight. This is the biggest fight in his career for him. So, this might bring the best out of him, or, he may crumble under pressure, who knows. But definitely great to see AJ looking at this. I'm just going to play you a video as well of AJ's hand speed. He looked quick, well fast. Okay, here we go, I'm going to play it for you. Check this out. He looks slimmer than I've ever seen him look, that fast and that quick in a long time. I'm sorry, but it's true. This is a 50% reduction in speed I did on this, and he's still looking slick and quick. Boom! Alright, looking forward to that one on March 31st. May the best man win. What else can I say? Okay, look, that's all I've got for you guys on this week's podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, like, share and subscribe. Until next time, guys, this is Cypherbox reminding you to keep it real.
I was gonna rip his heart out, I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one can stop me. Lynx is a conqueror, no, I'm Alexander, he's no Alexander. I'm the best ever, there's never been anybody ruthless. I'm Sonny Liston, I'm Jack Dempsey, there's no one like me. I'm from Nairclaw, there's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart, I want to eat his children. Praise be to Allah.